Welcome back, everyone, to more from the Sable Eyes. I'm here today with Blake, who's over there. How you doing, Blake?
I'm doing well, thanks, Mitch.
Fantastic.
That might have been the wrong direction.
That's all right. You're looking to your, I don't know, left. And then Jordan, you're on that side. How you doing, Jordan?
Not too bad. Got a bunch of new cards to talk about, so I'm excited to see what we end up deciding as the best cards.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're looking at our tier list for Cosmic Eclipse cards. The set, as of the release of this video, comes out tomorrow. So if you're not already decided on what cards you would like to purchase, then this video might help you a little bit. We're going to look over a ton of cards. Not every card that's playable will come up on the list. We might have forgotten some, so we're sorry if we do that. But we've kind of picked out most of them. There's also some cards that I like maybe a little bit playable, but not really. We'll quickly run through the tier lists and what they mean. S tier, I think we decided, gentlemen, is going to be the cards that are going to make a drastic impact on the game. These are cards that are going to be staples in lots of decks or make a significant impact. A tier cards are cards that are probably going to have a big impact in a specific deck. Maybe they're a new archetype or they make an old archetype really good. B tier cards are those kind of cards that float around that middle section. They're good enough to create some impact, but they're probably not going to see play everywhere. C tier cards, good one-offs, they'll see consistent play. And D tier cards are cards that we could see being useful at some point in the future, but realistically we might need to get a little bit lucky with some card pools. So we'll see how we go. Are we all ready to go?
Yep.
Yeah, I'm ready to go.
All right. Well, let's start off with a card that I know I was very excited about when it came out, and that is Red and Blue. Blake, tell us what you think. What do you think?
I love this card. This card is like everything I wanted to help Dark Box rise from the ashes and hopefully reach its full potential. Because of another card that's probably going to appear high up in the list, it might not see as much play as it probably should. But I think Red and Blue in any deck that runs GX Evolutions should run 3 to 4 copies of this card. This card is insane. The ability to accelerate energy with an additional effect, like World has shown in the past, is really strong and meta-defining. So I think if you find the right Stage 1 GX to evolve into with Red and Blue, I think that deck's going to become immediately 10 times stronger. Just because of the effect of that card.
Yeah, I tend to agree. It's really, really good, especially with some of the Stage 1 GXs that we'll be talking about a little bit later on. Jordan, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree that it's definitely got a lot of potential in Dark Box specifically. That's the deck that it seems like it has the most potential in. And it seems like it's a generically good card that's going to see play in a lot of decks. But we actually looked through the full list of Stage 1 GXs in the format, and there weren't that many that stood out that has that amazing synergy of Red and Blue. And it's the kind of card where usually I'd say, well, it'll get better as more GXs come out, but the fact that we're moving into Sword and Shield means we're not really going to be getting any more. So I feel like this card isn't going to be getting better in the future, but it's still strong enough that it's going to have a decent impact on the meta. So I think it's going to be at least decently high tiered.
Yeah, my gut feeling kind of says that this card is an A tier card. I don't think it's S tier, but it's definitely good enough to make some decks really strong. Things like Dark Box, like you mentioned, Blake, Volcarona and Silve Ally are both cards that we'll talk about later on that are very strong. So I can see that seeing play. But like you said, Jordan, once we get our cards from Sword and Shield, it might drop off a little bit. So worth getting for now, but I probably wouldn't be investing in a huge amount of full art copies of this card.
Not in full art, that's for sure.
Yeah,
but I mean, it's only a trainer, so it's only going to cost you a couple bucks to get to get 4 copies of this. And I think this card's almost even stronger than it probably should have been because we got Tag Call as well in this set.
That's true.
Which makes it easier to get access to this card the first turn that your Stage 1s are going to be able to evolve.
It is a beautiful full art though.
It is, that's true. It's a very nice looking card. It looks very, very nice.
If you're a collector, go nuts, because this card is, it's got red and blue on it, so I mean, it's probably going to
be super expensive. But hey, let's stick it up in A tier. We'll go on with some more of the tag team supporters. This one I'm also a really big fan of, and that is Mallow and Lana. This card is going to see a lot of play in a lot of different decks, but I don't know if it's going to be good enough to significantly change the way that things play. I'm just really excited that we've actually got some consistent ways to heal off some damage on some of those big tag teams.
Yeah, I've put in every deck that either plays Tag Call or I don't know, is just a tag team Pokemon in general. So yeah, pretty much every deck that has Tag Whistle or Tag Call in it. I put at least 2 copies of this card in my deck because tag teams take damage from non-GX attackers or things that just half hit. And well, pretty much a half hit is generically 120 to 130 damage, and that's what Mallow and Lana heals. So I think it's absurdly good at what it tries to do, which is keep your tag teams alive and promote a fresh one. So
yeah, exactly. It's a really good card at doing that. Jordan, how do you feel about it?
Yeah, I think that Lana and Mallow is like one of the better healing cards we've got in the format. 'Cause this format is actually lacking quite a bit in healing cards, I'd say. So it's definitely a welcome addition to the format, especially with the new supporters we get. In my opinion, it's probably one of the stronger tag team supporters we're getting in the set. Definitely in like the top 2 or 3 for sure. Not that there's that many of them, but it's definitely one that I've been including in quite a few lists. Maybe not as like a staple in every deck, but I definitely think that it makes quite a lot of decks quite a bit better. So I think it's at least as good as Red and Blue, if not better.
Yeah, so where do we want to put it? I've just put it in B tier for now, but are we saying that this is an A tier card?
I think there's an A tier card. I would almost tend to think that Red and Blue is more of a B tier card than Mallow and Lana because this will see more play.
I'm happy to swap them.
I agree.
I think I'd be happy with them both being in A tier. I don't think one necessarily has to be in B tier over the other. I think they're both good enough to be A tier cards.
Right,
for sure.
Well, Mallow and Lana is like more generically usable. It's a card that you'll play like a couple of in a lot of different decks, whereas Red and Blue is a really strong card in specific decks where you play a 4 of in the decks that it's good.
Yeah.
But then if it's not as good, obviously you're not going to play it in all
Alright,
the decks.
I can see that. That makes sense.
It's an S tier in the decks it's good in, and it's a D tier in the decks it's not supposed to be in.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. So
Makes sense.
that's fair. We'll swap that around. We'll put Red, Blue, and B, and we'll put Mallow and Lana as an A tier card, and I think that's fair as well. More tag team supporters. We've got Cynthia and Caitlin. Put a supporter from your discard into your hand, and then discard 1 and draw 3. It's a pretty generically good effect, but is it going to be good enough to see play in a lot of decks?
I think yes.
Yeah.
You go, Jordan.
Like, we've been talking about how good Tackle is quite a lot already, which makes sense because we're talking about these tag team supporters. And in my opinion, this is the supporter that you're going to play in every single list pretty much that plays Tackle. Whether it's a 1 of, a 2 of, like, it's good enough to be a staple of even as high as a 3 or 4 of. It's just a generically good draw supporter, and especially since it seems like we're moving more towards a format where we're getting a whole bunch of new techie 1 of, 2 of supporter cards that we're going to be playing instead of just a standard like 4 Welder, 4 Lily, 4 Cynthia, whatever it is. Like Cynthia and Caitlin seems like it has a lot of uses going into this new format, the way we're going to be building our list soon. So I think this is probably the best tag team supporter in my opinion.
Wow, that's a big call. The best one, Blake. Counterpoints?
Yeah, it is a big call. I don't think it's the best tag team supporter. I reckon it's like 2nd or 3rd maybe. But I think the reason it's so strong is it makes every other tag team supporter better, just because you get an extra use of them. And it allows you to play much techier with your supporter counts, especially in the tag team focused supporter builds. Because of the lack of VS Seeker or Tapu Lele at the moment, we've been forced into just running 4 of every supporter card that we want to use, and if we want to be able to use it at a specific time. Only Pokegear has really been able to help us in the past get a specific supporter for a specific turn, and of course Jirachi, but obviously they see 7 and 5 cards respectively, so not the greatest chance you're very guaranteed to see that supporter, but Tag Call is a guarantee, and that's why if you're going to need these supporters in a pinch, then you don't have to run a very high count of them, and you're still going to get full effectiveness of them. I think Cynthia and Caitlin's really good at really, expanding the usage of them, or even just your other supporters that you might have a techie count of.
Yeah, and I think the fact that Cynthia and Caitlin has come up in lots of the lists that we've built that is playing tag teams is a really a big incentive for us to put it reasonably high up. It's not an ST card by any stretch. I don't think that it's any better than Mallow and Lana, but is it on the same level as that, or are we happy to leave it in B tier where it is?
I'd say it's A,
You'd say it's A?
personally.
Blake?
I think it's B myself, but I don't know. I'll leave it up to you, Mitch.
I reckon it's a B tier card. I don't think that it's as strong in all the decks that it's in. Like Mallow and Lana has lots of versatility, and as does Caitlyn and Cynthia. But I think that Mallow and Lana is like a super strong card in lots of decks. Whereas Cynthia and Caitlyn, some decks won't be able to afford to use that turn. So we'll put it in B for now, if only because there are lots of cards that I think fit in the S and A tier in this particular set. We'll move on to a card that probably doesn't fit in there, but is a very interesting one, and that is a Bellelba and a Bryson Man. And Jordan, I know you're a massive fan of this card. Where do you think it sits?
I think it's okay. Like, it's definitely got a lot of uses, and I'm of the opinion now that, like, because of the format we're going into, GXs are going to get punished a lot more than they have been in previously, thanks to Great Catcher and Mega Lopunny and cards like that, which we'll talk about later. So I think the ability to get rid of your own GXs on the bench is pretty useful, as well as being a disruption card for your opponent. And of course, the mill free effect for both players is going to be a huge factor for stall decks like Pidgeotto. But you do also have to be careful, because everything it does to your opponent, it does to yourself as well. So it is a very balanced card in that sense.
That's true, yeah. So I actually... Sorry, you keep going.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I don't think it's going to be a card that finds its way into too many lists, but it's probably going to be pretty good in the list that it does find itself in.
Yeah, I think you're right. I can see it in lots of those stall decks, and anything that's milling the additional 3 cards is going to be really strong. I actually lost to this at pre-release, Blake, which I wasn't happy about. I was playing and ended up getting milled down to 3. What do you think about it?
Honestly, I haven't played around with the card at all yet, but Parallel City was a fantastic card. Milling 3 is a strong effect, and yeah, there's a lot of effects coming into this format that make this card even stronger than it would have been. If this card came out last set, it would have been borderline useless, I think, because now that Great Catcher's out, Great Catcher and the combination of that and Mega Lopunny, controlling how many GXs you've got is even more important, and getting rid of those Dedenes that a lot of decks are spamming 2 and 3 counts off. So, I can definitely see this card popping up in a lot of lists in the future if Mega Lopunny proves to be a huge nuisance, which I suspect it might be.
I think it might be. Yeah.
And Great Catcher is going to be in every list, just about that. No, it's going to be in every list. So I think other than no, every list. No. So.
Close enough.
Yeah, I think this is at the very least a B tier card because it's situational, but it's situationally very strong.
I think it's situationally very strong, but I think that the situations that it's strong in don't come up as often as we would think it is, and I think that the fact that we've got so many strong tag team supporters in this set might mean that this is the one that falls on the wayside. I think it's a C tier card. I think it's really, really good in a couple of decks, but I don't think that it's going to see much play beyond that. Jordan, what do you think?
Yeah, I think it's kind of insulting to put it in the same tier as Red and Blue and Cynthia and Caitlyn, because I think those 2 cards are significantly better than Bryson Man, because they're going to either be played in higher counts or in more decks, whereas this is going to be a lower count and in less decks. And I'd say it makes less of an impact in the meta overall. So I'd be happy to put it in C tier as well, I think.
Yeah, I don't think that it's a D tier card by any stretch, but I don't think that it's much higher than that. Another card which is an interesting one, and I think it falls into the same category, is Misty and Lorelei. This is a tag team card that's even more situational than Bellelba and Bryson Man. I can't even remember the full text of the card. I think it's like search for 3 water energy and discard 5 or something.
No, the discard effect is 5. So it's search for up to 3 water energies from your deck. You may also discard 5 other cards, so not the water energy you search for, and then that allows any of your water type Pokemon to use their GX attack again this turn.
Right. So it's going to be good in maybe 1 or 2 decks that are playing water GXs in order to manipulate that. Alright, Blake, talk about it. I'm going to look over this way at you. Jordan, you should be looking at Blake as well. Look to your right. This is going to be interesting. He's to your right.
To my right, alright.
Yeah, there you go. Beautiful. Blake, go for it.
Here's the thing. I think this is on the same, almost on the same tier as Red and Blue, because this card is bonkers in the decks that run it. I think this card absolutely breaks like a lot of decks that well, pretty much every water type GX deck. So we got like that new we got the new Blastoise tag team. Not a spectacular GX attack, but it helps accelerate to other water type GXs. But being able to use 2 of Palkia's GX attack, the one that shuffles in all your energy, super disruptive, extra frustrating. We've got what was the other one? There's at least one other good one. I know, because what was the other card we were playing?
Is it Keldio's? Yeah, Keldio's GX attack's pretty good.
Yeah, you have 2 dangerous rogues per game. That's pretty sweet. I love that.
Okay.
2 towering splashes. Hilarious. Highly unlikely, but still hilarious. The potential of it. But I mean, I don't know. I just feel like this card's really strong. 2 Cold Crushers. I had a big debate with my other team members on a little group chat today about how strong this could be in Birdstall, because you could Cold Crush more than once per game, and I think that's ridiculous because I think like getting off one use of that attack for full effect is crazy. If your opponent manages to refill and you can just do it again, then I think you demoralize them to the point where you probably just get the game. So,
okay, well you've made a
I think it's at least a C tier card. I don't think it's a D tier.
Oh yeah, I don't think we're arguing that it's D tier. I reckon it's a C tier card. Okay. I agree with you in that it is good in the decks that it's good in, but I think that it's in less decks than Red and Blue. I think Red and Blue is more versatile, so you can use it in more situations. Therefore, it's a better card. Is that fair?
Well, I'm happy to counter argue with Blake a little bit here. Okay. So, a couple of the Pokemon that Blake mentioned, I don't think you're going to really see much play. So, like, Blastoise Piplup is a cool card, but how many Blastoise Piplup lists have we been testing recently? I remember you guys were talking about building a deck.
To be fair, we did build one.
Terrible.
No, I didn't say it was terrible. I just said I didn't see it working.
I wanted to build the list, but then behind my back, you guys scrapped the idea and decided to build something else instead. So, you know what? Whatever.
Much better.
I'll waste 15, 20 minutes of my life trying to build that deck list with Mitch, and then just have it scrapped behind my back. No worries.
I think it's an okay list. I think the Blastoise Piplup has potential, but okay, we've lost Blake. He's gone straight away.
But yeah, besides the fact that there are definitely a couple good cards that it synergizes with, I'd say that Keldeo and potentially that Articuno GX are 2 of the main ones that come to my mind. Maybe like in Arceus Dialga Palkia could have some use because you can use a GX attack besides Arceus Dialga Palkia's. But also, the other part of this card is that's such a heavy cost. Like, sure, the effect is pretty good, but discard 5 from hand. I mean, sure, you get to search for 3 of them from deck, so it's not too unreasonable, but yeah, I don't know if I want to pay that effect.
You can't even discard the energy. You can't search those 3 and discard them.
Yeah, it specifies you can't use the water.
Well, then it's even worse than I thought.
Alright, well let's just leave that in C tier and move on because I don't want to get stuck bogged down on Misty and Lorelei. Because we've got another one to talk about. We've got the last tag team supporter that we're talking about today, and that's Guzman and Holla. Blake, I'll start you off with this one because you actually played it in your Gus Lord list, and I think it's pretty strong in that. Does it have any other uses?
I think it's specifically exceptional in Ultra Beast based lists because it's currently the only special energy worth searching in the format, other than maybe Weakness Guard energy. So it could maybe see play in Mewtwo, but
I think Mewtwo has bigger problems at the moment.
If you need to express out the Weak Guard energy, then I could see that being strong, and you could get the Chaotic Swell out super early, and hopefully prevent that Shrine from ticking on all of your GXs. But yeah, any deck that can abuse all 3 effects of this card is absolutely insane. This is one of the tag team supporters that I think will get stronger moving forward because it doesn't specify anything regarding GX Pokemon.
Yeah, no.
It's just special energy, stadiums, and a tool card, all of which are going to continue to see black print after we move on into Sword and Shield format.
Yeah, I can definitely see this one. This one has the most scope for improvement. You're right.
I think this one definitely goes the distance, and I think currently in a deck that can abuse it, this is potentially a B tier. It's C tier at the moment though, I think, because there's so many other good supporters right now that until a few of them go away, or more decks appear where this is like absolutely the supporter you want to play like every time. I think it's just you play it in too low a count for it to be like an A or a B tier card, so it's probably a C tier for me.
Yeah, fair enough. Jordan, would you
Yeah,
agree with that?
I think I agree with everything you guys have said. It is a very welcomed addition to the card pool because special energy tutoring is something we haven't really had in a long time. I can't even remember.
Or guaranteed stadium.
Yeah, exactly.
Because what we had was stadium nav.
That's true as well, actually. I don't like flipping coins if I don't have to. That's a lie. But
You love
anyway.
flipping coins. Come on.
Yeah, I think that it's not really busted anything right now. Like I was trying it out in BHM, and I think it's got a lot of potential in BHM. I ended up cutting it just because I was having some consistency issues, but I could see myself probably wanting to put it back into that deck because triple acceleration energy is a very powerful special energy card that isn't really seeing much play at the moment.
That's
Eventually, I feel like that card's going to come back into the format at some point when something gets printed that it's busted with. So I agree with it probably being C tier right now, but the card itself is probably strong enough to be a B tier card when it finds a better card pool to support it.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think that's probably a fair statement. C tier for the moment, but definitely room for improvement. We've got a couple more supporters to look at before we move on to some of the Pokemon in this set. Some of them are going to be pretty strong, some of them not so much. We'll start off with Ends Resolve. Now, this feels like another one of those cards to me that is really strong in the decks that uses it, but apart from that, it's not particularly useful, which jumps out as me as another C tier card. But hey, like Reshiram is a deck, and that's a pretty strong card, and Ends Resolve obviously fits in with that. So there is always the opportunity for it to be a little bit higher up just because of the impact it has. What do we think, boys?
I've got a pitch. All right. Let me just frame this card for you.
I'm listening.
Very nice.
Imagine this. Imagine Max Elixir, but every time you revealed an energy, you got to attach it to the bench the dragon type Pokemon of your choice. Wow, I saw 4 energy. Usually you get to attach 1, but I get to attach all 4. Busted, right? And then I thin out all the cards that I didn't want off of that Max Elixir. That's crazy. All it costs is my supporter for turn. Insane. No, it's not actually that good. I think it's actually pretty bad. To be honest, unless you're running like 10 plus of each energy in that Reshiram deck, I think that card's super underwhelming like every time. And its only real use is to try and get that GX attack to work, but that's way too situational and requires way too much specific energy. It's funnily enough, you find a hard enough time just getting 1 fire and 1 lightning onto that Pokemon, which is ridiculous in a format where we get 3+ energy onto different GX tag teams in 1 turn. No problem. But they abuse Welder beautifully. And this card doesn't quite, so I think Ends Resolve is a D tier card.
That's a big call. You can't even see him on the screen when you go down to a D tier card. Wow, we'll leave him in C for the moment for Jordan's argument. What do you think?
Well, yeah, I agree with a lot of card things that Blake was saying there, because I think back to Max Elixir days, and those were some fond memories. But I also think of a lot of whiffed Max Elixirs. And I can't even imagine how bad it would feel if I had to discard those 6 cards every single time I whiffed one, as well as having to waste my supporter for the turn. And obviously it's not as universal as Max Elixir, because it is almost exclusively Reshiram card. Like,
pretty much.
Play a lot
you
of
do
decks
it with
like
Gus Lord, I guess.
Yeah.
ADP. I guess.
And the other one was ADP, as you mentioned. Like, there's a few things that it's okay in, but it is for the most part exclusively a Reshiram exclusive card, and we yet to see how good that deck's going to be. I think it could be pretty decent, but I'm a little skeptical to call it like a tier 1 deck as of right now, so we'll have to wait and see what happens to that. But yeah, as I was just saying, I would feel much more confident attaching 2 energy to the bench using a Welder rather than an Ends Resolve, and that GX attack is almost exclusively the only reason why I'd be wanting to include this card in the list.
Yeah, I reckon that's fair.
And the thing is, I think even if Reshiram becomes the undisputed best deck in the format by a mile, and that's because it plays 4 copies of Ends Resolve, I still don't think this card's a B tier card.
No, fair enough.
That's my opinion.
There would be an argument for it being B tier if that was the case, but I don't think that's going to be the case, so I think it caps at C tier.
No, the deck is impossible to build to beat non-GXs at the moment. I don't think this deck will ever have a place at the top tier at the way it currently is. It's missing something and missing a way to deal with non-GXs. It's too expensive. It's too hard. It's an inconsistent, way more inconsistent Blacephalon. in my opinion.
Yeah, fair enough.
I think it does everything it wants to do better, and it doesn't need a really bad supporter to make its GX attacks work.
Yeah, fair enough.
Blacephalon is not lacking in damage output anyway,
No,
so you don't really need that extra buff in the first place.
I just prefer to play Blacephalon because then I can just play Welder, right? So Welder's a better supporter.
Much builder.
Much builder. Builder. It's a builder supporter. We'll put N down in D tier. You can only just see the little top of it. I think once we put some cards in S tier, that we're not going to be able to see D tier anymore, but that's okay. Because if the card's in D tier, we don't really want to look at it. And let's move on to another card, which I think could potentially be one of the higher tier cards on this list. And that's Rosa. Now, Jordan, you and I have a bit of a look into the future here, because we've seen just how powerful Rosa can be in some decks in the format, specifically things like Lost March. But does that make it good enough to put it into the high tiers here, or does making a bad deck slightly better just make this card useless?
You just triggered a whole lot of people by calling Lost March bad.
It's a bad deck. I'll say it.
Moving on from that,
Marco, if you're watching, come at me, mate. Lost March is a bad deck.
Well, we'll have to wait and see for that one.
Marco knows. He knows it's a bad deck.
He knows.
He just
likes to play it. And fair enough, because it is fun to play, so I will say that.
But yeah, I think that it actually kind of reminds me of Professor Elm's lecture a bit, because it's like really, really powerful in the decks that it's good in, but it is obviously only going to be good in a couple decks. But to be fair, like every deck is going to have Pokemon that are being knocked out, so it's never a completely terrible or dead card. Like even in a tag team deck, you could use it at least once per game. Not that I'd recommend putting it in a tag team deck, but my point being is it's never completely a dead card. And searching for your deck for any Pokemon and any trainer card, and of course the basic energy is pretty decent as well. But like those are some pretty busted effects. So I'd say non-GX decks are going to take the most advantage of this. And moving forward, non-GX decks are looking like they're going to be pretty good. So I'd say it's a strong case to be like at least B tier. I don't know if it's good enough to be A tier. It could be, because it's definitely making quite a big impact on quite a few different decks. But I don't know if those decks are going to be the best decks in the format.
Yeah, well, the question is if this card is helping non-GX decks, and the only non-GX deck that's realistically worth playing at the moment is Malamar, does that make it a B tier card? Because for me, like, you could put Rosa in Malamar, that would be fine, but I don't think you need to. I don't think like the space that you'd use to put that card in doesn't necessarily benefit you as much as, say, like a 4th Lily or a 4th Jirachi might. I don't know. We haven't tested it, but does that make this card good? Blake, what do you think?
I just want to quickly touch on it regarding Lost March. I think if you watched our video where Mitch plays Lost March against my Blacephalon, I think if you've watched that video, you can quite accurately assume that it's not fun to play Lost March at all. So both of those points are untrue.
I don't know if anyone can actually watch it. I don't know if that video's out yet. So you might have just spoiled that video. I don't know.
We'll find out.
If it's not out yet, please watch that one.
I think my answer to how good Rosa is how good. What tier would you put Diantha in right now? I think honestly this card is probably on a similar power level to Diantha. And I think Diantha, at the time that it was released, had one of the strongest non-GX cards in the format to base it around in Grand Ball, and I only saw like 1 or 2 copies played of it because it was super inconsistent. Now that's probably due to the fact that, due to the nature of the deck, where you had to reduce your hand size to 0. But I mean, that deck was one of the ones that had a Pokemon knocked out almost every turn and was super strong in that respect. But I think any card that relies on your Pokemon getting knocked out every turn for it to be any good is worth playing in a high count, because if you draw it early, turns out the card's useless on your first turn when no one's declared an attack yet. And you can't play it in small counts because then you don't find it when a Pokemon does get knocked out. I think this card is a C tier card. Anything that relies on your Pokemon getting knocked out, unless it is absolutely busted, is worth it. And I don't think just searching for a Pokemon, a trainer, and an energy card is busted. I think it's like playing a ball search and using Viridian for turn and drawing a support off the top. But I think that's pretty good. It's strong, but
there's a big difference between Diantha and Rose.
There is.
Diantha, a very specific card, like it's only for fairy decks, whereas Rosa's a universal card, so it can be played in a whole bunch of different things, and it seems pretty good in a whole bunch of different things. And the thing I really love about Rosa is the fact that it can chain itself. You can just search for a Rosa plus 2 other cards, and in decks like Lost March or Malamar or pretty much any non-GX deck in the format right now, where you're expecting to be able to be knocked out every single turn, this card kind of sets you up for like the entire game if you use it correctly.
I don't know. I think if you put it like that, I think that way Rosa is only ever searching 2 cards out every turn, and it's making sure that you can search out another 2 cards the next turn. I think a lot of the time, if you've like so many decks play Viridian, even though Chaos Swirl comes out, I think that card is still super popular. Just searching out like an extra energy and getting an extra Pokemon every turn. I don't think it's worth. I don't think
is bad, right? That's like saying Greens is bad.
Boys, I don't think it's. I don't think it's. I just don't think it's. Don't think it's worth it when 1/3 of the good part of your card is wasted making sure you can do it again the next turn, because then it's like it's not as good. And I think the real problem with this card is it's good in non-GX decks, right? But what if the only non-GX deck in the format, because it's overwhelmingly strong and does every other thing better than all the other non-GX decks, doesn't even want to play the card that is super good in non-GX decks, how strong can it really be?
That's a valid point.
I think rather than sitting here and arguing all night about how good Rosa is, I think we just settle. I think it's a C-tier card. It's a really good card, but as long as Giratina is in the format, I think this card probably is not going to see a huge amount of play, just because Malamar beats out those decks. Like as soon as Malamar goes, Rosa will be very, very strong. And like Guzman and Holla, it has lots of scope to improve, because again, it's not specific, it just says a Pokemon, a trainer, and an energy. So we can see it for the next 2 years, it'll probably be really strong, and as soon as we get rid of Giratina and Malamar, we could potentially see it get a little bit better. So I'll just mediate that one. We're just going to settle down, and we're going to move on to the next supporter, and I'll make it one that we can all universally agree that is not necessarily great, and that's Roller Skater. Should we put this in D tier now, or should we talk about it and then put it there?
Is there a tier below D?
No, there's not.
Damn it.
So the reason I'm putting Roller Skater in here is because there has been lots of discussion about this card seeing play in decks like Malamar, because it can guarantee that energy going into the discard, but I still think that Viridian just does that job better.
Oh man, boy, this is great. I get to say the most cheering thing I could possibly say right now. This card's better than Rosa and Malamar. Oh my god,
I disagree with that.
That is hilarious how much better this card is.
Oh my god.
Sometimes one of the worst things you have in this deck is the ability to not get energy in the discard. And then you get to draw 4 cards. Awesome! No worries. That's like half the time what Lily does in this deck anyway, because it's so bloody inconsistent. You can't play all the cards because they're all Malamars and cards you can't play. Spell tags for your non-psychic types on the bench because you haven't hit a mysterious treasure yet. That's great. I just get to throw an energy in the bin, draw 4 cards, and they're all useless. Awesome.
Excellent.
No worries.
But Jordan, counterpoint. No, you're gonna stop blank. Otherwise, you'll be talking all night. Jordan, counterpoint. I gotta moderate this thing. Jordan, tell me how bad Roller Skater is in Malamar.
Well, if Blake wants to play Roller Skater and Malamar, he's more than welcome to, but I would strongly advise against it, because I think Rosa does the exact same thing. You can search for an energy and a Viridian and a Malamar, and all of a sudden you've just guaranteed a psychic recharge, whereas Roller Skater is gonna draw 4 cards. Like 4 cards is reasonable, but
I can play Roller Skater on the first turn, so I can get an energy. That's usually when I want my energy in the discard, Jordan. How about you? I like it on the first turn.
I would rather Lily turn one, to be honest, but hey, that's just me.
That's fair.
But your Lily's only draw 4 cards anyway. I might as well get a psychic in the discard.
I'm Lily for 8 every game.
Okay, let's stop, because what I'm hearing here is that Roller Skater is a good card on the first turn of Malamar, so that makes it a bad card. Is that fair?
Yep.
Beautiful.
Yep.
Okay, let's move on. Let's move on. Professor Oak's setting.
Great time.
Professor Oak's setting. This could potentially be a good card. The ability to search out 3 basics, all of different types. But at the moment doesn't really have a home to potentially see things like Dark Box or maybe even Malamar. We don't really want to talk about that. Blake, you want to say something?
Yeah. Oh man, it's so good in non-GX decks. But wait, Malamar's here. Good old Malamar with its 1 type.
that's not
let
true. You can play Ditto. You can play the dark version of Inkay. You can play Jirachi. You've got all sorts of different types of Pokemon, Blake. I think you're selling it short.
I actually don't mind the idea of playing this on Dark Box because I did get that Water type Sneasel. I think it's pretty cute. You can search for that, the Dark type, and Ditto or a type Null. At least in the build with Silve Ally that I like playing. Which does have potential, but again, I wish they just put that little tag team little cross at the top left of the card because I kind of don't want to play it because it doesn't have that. Yeah, and I don't want to have to find space to put in Pokegears as well as tag calls. That's painful for me. I'd rather just play all my tag team supporters and a few lilies and not have to worry and hopefully just find my
Hopefully just draw into them. Yeah. Jordan, what do you think, mate?
I mean, this is just another pretty strong turn 1 supporter. If you get in your first turn, then you're going to be fine to set up your board. But unlike some of the other cards we've mentioned, I think this card gets drastically worse as soon as Sword and Shield comes around because this being a turn 1 supporter in a format where we get to lose the ability to play a supporter on the first turn.
Theoretically, we don't know that for sure yet.
We don't know for sure if that's true.
We know for sure. We know for sure.
Do we know for sure?
Yeah, it's locked in. We know for sure.
All right.
Yeah, I thought so. So this card at max has a 3-month lifespan, and I think it's going to have limited play in those 3 months as well. It could be decent in a couple decks,
I'll just put it down.
I mean, it's still good going second. So going second, you can still play it on the first turn. It's just not going first on the first turn that you can't play the supporter. So I think it's still strong. It's just if you lose the coin flip, you'll be playing this card instead. So. But the other problem is the reason it's got a 3-month lifespan is because we get a new Professor Sycamore, and that probably replaces every kind of card like this card in the format. So, I'm so glad that card's going to be here because half of this discussion that we're having right now is pointless as soon as that card comes out because I was going to play 4 of that card. It's ridiculous.
Yep, Magnolia is a pretty good one. We haven't put it in D tier or C tier. What do we think? Either, Blake?
I think it's a C tier card. It's super strong. It's got nothing to go in at the moment.
Yeah, it's kind of awkward, isn't it? And when you're talking about one of the best decks to put it in is Dark Box, but you'd rather play something else. You put in Malamar, but you'd rather be playing something else. I think that's summing up Professor Oak at the moment. It could potentially see some play, but yeah, like we said, as soon as that rule comes in, which apparently it's coming in, I should have paid more attention. This card is. This card is done. But hey, that's all of the supporters, so we can stop arguing about which supporters are going to be good in Malamar, and we can just move on to some of the Pokemon that we can put in Malamar. And this one can go in Malamar. It's Mega Lopunny and Jigglypuff, and this is probably the best card in the set. If not, it's the best Pokemon in the set. I don't think it's even up for debate. This card is busted, and it's going to change the way that people have to play the game. Things like Ability Zard cannot rely on Dedenne anymore, because otherwise this guy would just come out, smack him, take a knockout, and end the game. This card is broken, and the best thing is that it can fit in Malamar, Jordan, which I'm excited about.
Yeah, you can. I think that there's a case to say that this card is going to have the biggest impact on the format out of every card in the set, because not only is it going to be played in a lot of decks, it's going to change the way that lists are being played, and it's going to change the way that players are going to have to play the game. We're going to have to try and be a bit more careful with our Dedenne benches. Previously, up until now, we've been able to kind of run away and play out as many Dedennes down as we want to, and they're not very often going to be punished. But now you're going to have to make a real conscious decision as to how many you're putting into play. Is it worth drawing those 6 cards when you know you're going to be giving your opponent some more options to take some big one-hit carries in the mid to late game with Mega Lopunny? And the fact that it's colorless just means this card can be put into almost any deck.
Yeah, the fact that you can Welder to it, you can Malamar to it, you can accelerate any type of energy is really, really strong. Blake, talk more. Let's go.
I don't feel like more needs to be said about the card.
Yeah.
I thought this card was broken when I thought it had 30 base power, and then I learned it was 60 base for some ridiculous reason. It's got a reasonable amount of health, and it's only got 1 retreat, which is fine. At least it doesn't have 3 retreat. Then I would be really mad at how good this card is.
That would be upsetting.
But I mean, it's a tag team, so it's searchable with tag call. Funnily enough, I think right now, our channel is probably the only channel that's put Mega Lopunny in its Malamar list so far. I think the others are just flirting with the whole non-GX thing at the moment and just abusing the new Blacephalon and all that. all of that jazz, and just sort of not thought, oh, well, Malamar's usually the non-GX guy. Let's not put the really busted card that punishes everyone for benching.
That wins the game. If when you play down
Yeah.
any more, like, because when you put down more than 2 GXs, this thing does 240 damage. That's ridiculous. It's just ridiculous.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
And how many decks can you say realistically are going to play less than 2 GXs if they need them to set up? Like, it's going to be really, really strong. I don't think we need to talk about it anymore. We can all
I just want to. I would like to add that I think, if nothing else, this card is S tier because it actually has a secret ability that you can't see that says relegate Pikarom to tier 3.
Yes. It makes Pokemon
I think that's a pretty
bad.
strong. I think I'd play that if I had a bit of Pikarom in my format. I don't know about you guys. I'd play it.
It makes Pikarom really bad, makes Mewtwo really bad, it makes Reshizard, Abilityzard really bad, makes lots of decks really
I don't think
struggle.
I don't think it makes Mewtwo really bad because I think Mewtwo is actually the deck that runs it the best. But I think it's still pretty good.
It's a pretty good card.
Bad, which we'll talk about later.
It's a pretty good card. Well, let's talk about now the card that everyone thought was going to be an S tier card when they first saw it released. 270 damage for 2 energy. That seems really, really strong. But we've already talked about it a little bit when we've talked about End's Resolve. Reshiram and Zekrom. Where do we think this one sits, fellas? I'm not sure that a Pokemon with a GX attack that is super reliant on a bad supporter could necessarily be a super great card. Is that a reverse B you're doing there, Blake?
I'm not sure which way my camera's reversed, so I'm just trying to make a B. It's a B. I think it's a B.
You think it's a B?
I've seen like 4 different channels now and look at this list and try and make it work.
No one's really been able to do it super well.
It's sort of clunky. I saw Andrew Mahomes' list was actually it was very similar to ours. It was missing like 1 or 2 bits that were kind of similar. He wasn't playing End Resolve as well, which sort of adds to the fact that card's really bad. But I think that it just doesn't flow like a tier 1 deck. It's got something missing.
Yeah.
And also the fact
you go, mate. I was about to jump in.
Just stupidly enough, 270 is not enough damage.
Yeah, 270 isn't. There's actually a ton of Pokemon that come out in this set that have 280, as well as some Pokemon in Dark Box as well. So just doing 270 isn't enough anymore.
And we have Choice Helmet. So if this deck ever became relevant, you just well.
Yeah, Choice Helmet. You're never going to be able to one-shot anything now.
Guess I run Choice Helmet and make your deck irrelevant. Hey, because the one thing it's good at doing, it doesn't do anymore.
Yeah, so.
And then it can run, the Chaotic Swell, so that Lysander Labs never hits play. So you just all right, cool. That's a matchup that I've just won by putting in a couple copies of these
two
cards,
tools.
So
yeah, exactly.
I think I don't know. I think it's pretty average, and also I think it's also a bit weaker because I think Guardian's actually going to be super strong in this format. So I think that also makes it a bit lower. It's not even just the weakness; it's just you can put Dragon Charm on it, which is even better at reducing it to nothing.
Yeah, that's a better tool than Choice Helmet. That's 100% a better tool than Choice Helmet. Jordan, what do you think?
Yeah, it's kind of weird because this card has so much support going for it because in the last few sets we've seen Fire and Lightning are the 2 types that have probably got the most support, or at least some of the most support out of all the types in the format between Volkner, Welder, Tapu Koko, Electropower, not that works with Zekrom, but there's so much support for both of those types, and you can kind of make a hybrid between those 2 decks like what we've tried to do, where you just play so many busted cards in one list, but it's kind of weird to say that it does 270 damage for 2 energy, because in reality it actually does 270 for 5 energy, which is a little harder to get into play, obviously.
It is a bit harder to pull off.
Yeah, it just doesn't feel like it does enough in the format right now to be a tier 1 deck. It could be like a decent deck, tier 1.5 at most, in my opinion. But yeah, it's going to struggle against non-GX decks, I feel, because it doesn't really have many good non-GX options.
You can just say Malamar.
It's Malamar.
Well, yeah, it's probably got a bad Mallow matchup.
Everything has a bad Malamar matchup.
I don't think it has a great GX versus GX game either. It's not a terrible. There's definitely going to be some decks that it just sets up against and wins.
Okay, so Jordan, you're saying it doesn't have a good matchup against non-GXs. It doesn't have a good matchup against GXs.
Oh yeah, pretty much. I think it's just an okay deck.
It's an okay card. Does that mean that it should be lower than B tier then?
No,
I think it's a B tier card.
Alright. We'll leave it in B tier.
It's got potential. I could see someone breaking this card, and that
fair
would.
enough.
I just think it's hilarious that like it seems like a broken math equation, right? It's like let's take the best cards from this tier 1 deck and the best cards from this tier 1 deck, and we combine them together to make somehow a worse deck than either of the parts that make it
worse. Yep, exactly.
Yep.
But hey, anyway, let's move on to another big GX card that's coming out of this format, and that is Charizard and Braixen. It's going to be expensive because it's got a Charizard on it, but I think this card has lots of potential to be a really, really strong deck. It obviously struggles with Reset Stamp, but searching 3 cards every time you do 180 is pretty strong, and it really benefits from things like Mallow and Lana as well. So I think this card has lots of potential. I think this is probably an A tier card, which is why I put it there, because it's its own deck, and it's going to be strong enough to be its own deck for a long time. Jordan, how do you feel?
Yep, I think A tier is exactly where I would place it as well. Only because it's not like a splashable card. Otherwise, it's got the power of an S tier card, but is restricted to only one deck. So, I mean, obviously you can play it in like a bunch of different fire builds, but it does become one of the better new archetypes in my opinion, if not the best new deck coming out of the set in my opinion. It's got a lot of good tools that you can play. You can really be very innovative when you're building this list. We've already seen a whole bunch of really cool lists popping up for it, and the set isn't even legal for play yet. So I can only imagine this card's going to be pushed and pushed to see full potential as the format goes on.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Blake, what do you think?
I think this is one of those cards where, unlike a lot of other decks, there'll never be a list of 60 that people will agree this is the way you run this deck, because there's so many different ways to run it to get it to do like different jobs in different formats. I think the real strength of this card is that you can adapt it to whatever format you live in. Wherever you are in the world, you can make this card beat your format if you know how to do that.
Yeah.
Right. So I think this card is a very skill-based. This brings out the skill of deck builders, I think.
Yeah.
I think this is probably one of the strongest cards for those people who are excellent at building decks, because you'll get to really see your deck building shine through this card. Because if you know this deck in and out, and you've got it to do a specific job, unless you like whiff welder on the first couple turns in a row, it's going to do that job every time. And like Reset Stamp is strong. But at the moment, there's not very many decks that are playing more than 2 copies of it. And you think you need to play more than 2 copies to beat this deck.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Because, like, I mean, on our channel, this is a video that people have definitely watched because I've already watched it.
Yep.
Charizard Braixen versus Snaggle Lord. I built my Snaggle Lord deck to play its first 3 or 4 turns like a still deck, but Mitch was seeing more specific cards a turn than I was, and I was playing Steven's Resolve. So, take it what you will, but I was playing Steven's Resolve and healing like 60 to 110 damage a turn, but Mitch was doing 180 damage a turn and then searching his cards. So, yikes! That's pretty good to me, and I think there's unlimited potential for this card. As long as there's not overwhelming, there's not like some overwhelming influx of water types to come into the format or something like that. This format would have to turn blue for me to see this card like just
disappear,
get relegated to nothingness. But I don't know.
Honestly, even if that happens, like you can probably build a list for the deck to kind of counteract water decks if you wanted to. It just seems like the perfect kind of deck for my ideal kind of playstyle, because I like the idea of playing control decks, but I don't want to play stall. I want to be able to apply pressure to my opponent, but I also want to be able to outplay them, and this just gives so many options.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. We're going to put it in the A tier. It's really, really strong, and I'm looking forward to playing it. I think this is going to be a super, super fun deck for quite a while. We'll move on to another big tag team, and that is Arceus, Dialga, Palkia. This is the one when it was revealed at Worlds that everyone went crazy because it seemed so good, but we haven't been able to get it to work as consistently yet. It does have a lot of potential. Is it an A tier card? Or does the potential and the lack of a really consistent list at the moment push it down the tier list? Jordan, what do you think? I know this was your baby when you were building it.
Yeah, so I did have a lot of high hopes for this deck when we were first trying it. My original list for it was going fairly well, but I ended up having couple of consistency issues with it. So I think that the list that we've gone with needs to be reworked quite a bit. It's interesting because I think this card is better than Reshiram right now, but I think it's worse than Breakzard. So it obviously has to be one of those two tiers in my mind. And I'd say for the time being, I'd put it more in the B tier just because it's a very slow card. I feel like a lot of decks will be able to manipulate it and get around it, but it is once again a deck where if you do set up and if you do get going in the way you'd like to do so, I feel like it can beat almost anything.
Yeah, I think that this deck really needs a specific list. We were talking, Blake, about how Breakzard is never going to have 60 cards. This one probably will, and once you've got that 60 card list, you're able to use the GX attack turn 1 or turn 2 every game and get your attacks off. You'll probably start to see some success with it, but until such a time as we can get that consistent list, I'm not sure. Blake, what do you think?
I disagree about the 60 card list thing. I think there's definitely what we're missing is the skeleton to get that turn 2 GX attack going like every game. Well, actually, that's not necessarily true. That's not the hard part really, but because you just need to manual attach twice.
Yeah,
turn 1 GX attack is a little harder.
Turn 1 GX attack is where it's different.
And that's kind of what I feel like it needs to do to keep up with the decks in format.
But I will say, there is no way that the effect printed on that card could ever be lower than A tier. There's no way. This card has to eventually become good. I refuse that making every card in your deck do 30 plus damage and take an extra prize. It will eventually become busted.
That's exactly how I feel.
And this is one of those cards that can overcome the difference between like non-GX decks, because you can take 2 prizes on Malamars and Giratinas. Screw those cards. Yeah, take 2 on them. Take 3 knockouts and it's done.
I think that's fair. What we'll do is we'll put it in A tier, if only because it cannot possibly be bad. At the moment, with the list that we built, it's not quite there yet, but like you said, Jordan, I don't think the list that we built was the list for this deck. So
we've got a B tier list.
Yeah, that's a fair statement to make. So someone will make a better deck with that card than we could, and it'll probably be an A tier 1. Now, Blake, you mentioned it before. It's Snaggle Lord. Where does this baby fit?
Honestly, this card's pretty bad.
I'll just move it off the screen.
It doesn't do anything. It, like, mapping your prizes, taking 2 free prizes is cool. But I don't think it's that, like, if you're a good enough player, you know what's in your prizes. Taking them in the right order can be neat sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes.
Sometimes, but you know, I don't think it's going to be too long before they reprint Town Map or something, and then the Robin Schultzes in the world will be happy that card's back, so they can put it in everything for some reason. But doing 180 for 3 with no down cost, like no downside. Charizard breaks and does that. Except the search for 3 cards. It's pretty good. Cards, yeah. And it gets to play a better supporter to cover it in Welder, that's a good card. Green's pretty good too. They're both really good supporters. Alright, calm down on the Rosa thing, but you know, and then the ability strong. It's a 280 HP card, heals it, but it's also a tag team. So you know, if they overcome that difference, that difficulty, and manage to knock it out, it's probably still worth it. Like all the pain and the suffering they had to go through to take those 3 prizes. Other problem is the cards that make this guy good at taking damage are also GX cards. Mega Lopunny just got released. That card's busted. It ruins everything this card tries to do.
That's fair.
It's an Ultra Beast. It's got that going for it, so it gets Beast Energy, so it can do 210. That's a good number. You can kill Volcaronas, Silve Ally's. Those are both pretty good new cards. Don't know how popular they're going to be though. But the strongest part about this card is an Ultra Beast. You can use Beast Ring on it. But literally every other Ultra Beast in the format that's a basic or a tag team right now, I think does this card's job better. I don't see any reason to run this card.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I know that after we played our game, I found out later on, I'm assuming you've heard this as well, Blake, that the ability was mistranslated from what we originally thought, and you can actually discard any Pokemon from your hand instead of an Ultra Beast to heal the damage, which I thought might make the card a little bit better. But I do agree with all of the points that you just made, and I don't think the fact that you can heal with any Pokemon instead of just an Ultra Beast really fixes any of those issues.
Oh, I talked with Mitch about this before. I knew the whole time that it was any Pokemon.
He just
Oh,
didn't
did
tell
you?
anyone.
Okay.
Just
Well,
didn't
just
tell
me and
anyone.
Mitchie had no idea then.
Yeah, we had no
Yeah,
idea.
yeah. But I like the deck. There's no point building the deck with other Pokemon other than Ultra Beast because like I wanted to use Stack Attacker to reduce the amount of damage it's taking, which is Ultra Beast. I was like, cool. Well, I'm gonna stretch them out. I'm gonna play Ultra Space. So I'm gonna need a card that pivots into my heavy guys with Mallow and Lana. Cool. What's the best for retrieval in the format? Oh, it happens to be an Ultra Beast. Cool. It's Pheromosa.
That seems fair.
So I'm just gonna play all the Ultra Beasts that I want, and there's no point getting non-GX, non-Ultra Beasts in the deck just to eat them. I'll probably just play a Brock Grit or two so that I can recycle them, and then set them straight again with Ultra Space. I don't want to play
that's
Pokecoms if I don't have to. So yeah, I did know that you could eat anything. I just didn't think it was particularly relevant in the way I wanted to build it. But I don't think that changes anything about that card. I think the ability, it's mildly better, but the deck you're going to put Snaggle Lord into is full of Ultra Beasts, in my opinion. Some people like the idea of putting it in Dark Box as a one-of attacker. That is pointless. There is like 7 better GX attacks in that. There's 7 better GX attacks in that format, and you have to put Psychic Energy in it. Ew! I don't want to do that. I could see maybe putting a one-of Beast Energy so your Gus Lord does more damage. But I'm getting on an angry rant again. It's funny when I do it. I know you all enjoy it.
You've taken like 20 minutes to talk about a card that you reckon's in D tier, so shut up for a minute. And we'll move on. We've got a couple more tag teams. These are 2 that we didn't look at on the channel, so our judgment is not necessarily going to be great. The first one is the Babies, and I think the Babies has a really, really cool GX attack, but I don't think you'll ever declare it for the ability, which effectively wins the game. So I think that just makes this a cool collector's card, and nothing special. Is that fair?
Well, yeah, you told me, like, Jordan, try and build a deck for this card so that we can feature it on the channel. And I thought about it for like 5-10 minutes, and I realized that all of the ideas I came up with had 0 potential. So yeah, I don't think it's very good.
Yep, fair enough.
There's only one viable way to get this to GX attack, and unfortunately for us, it sits in Expanded, and that's Dragon's Wish Dragonair. That's the only way for you to be able to declare the attack on this card. I saw it on one of my Japanese subscribers' videos, and it looked really cool because you can use the Dene and your strong supporters, and then you can see all the energy you want to see. But you know, unfortunately in Standard, the best way to accelerate Fairy Energy is we can use Fairy Song to attach 2 to it, and then we can play Mina once per turn, and then
by the time the game's over,
4 turns of doing that in a row. And you can now declare that attack.
Excellent.
Problem is, though, after you've declared that attack, you do actually have to find, hopefully, their active Pokemon can be knocked out by something that does 120 damage.
Yep, it's not going to happen. So that's a D tier card. And Blake, I'll let you talk about this one. It's Blastoise and Piplup. Where do you think this one sits, considering you were so passionate about the list?
I mean, I think this card has like a striking resemblance to like the way you build like Green's Reshizard. Rare Candy have like a list up that they built it just like Green's. I think it works really well like that, built like that. Obviously we're going to build it differently so that we could have, you know, varied
something
content,
interesting.
Rather than just be like, hey, look, we saw Rare Candy's video too.
Have you watched Rare Candy's video? Well, this is the list from Rare Candy's video.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, but I think it has the potential to be like really strong, because like it does a lot of bulk healing. I think probably the worst part about the deck is that it doesn't really have an impressive GX attack in its arsenal so far. I think maybe if like you could,
I mean, its GX attack's pretty good.
I think it does 250 if you get the bonus effect and paralyzes, but what's the point of paralyzing something if you're going to try and kill it with the GX attack, you know?
Yeah,
that's like, I feel like they sort of counteract each other. Like they don't really synergize together. I think what might be cute in that deck is taking a Steel Energy and declaring like Arceus and ADP's attack beforehand and then going into that card.
That could be
That
cool.
would be cute.
Yeah, that would be cute. And you could use it with your Misty and your Lorelei. Is it a C tier card?
I think so. I think this card has the potential to be better than we currently see it. Because at the end of the day, it can accelerate 3 energy, and then it also heals when it does accelerate that energy. Healing and acceleration are both really strong, you know, mechanics. So anything with the potential to do it, especially in a format where fire types are still really good, I think a good water type is not something to go amiss. So
Yeah, fair enough. That's a fair call.
When I think about this card, I actually think of it more like, instead of being a deck, I actually think of it more as like a one-off tech and an ADP deck. I know that it's obviously, we already mentioned it's got synergy with Arceus, Dialga, Palkia, so just being a one-off in that deck seems pretty good if you're playing that Misty Lorelei to utilize the GX attack as well. I think that's a pretty useful way
except it does 280 now.
Yeah, now it's
Yeah,
doing something.
Exactly.
Now
So
we're talking numbers.
it's got a bit of potential maybe as a one-off in that deck. I wasn't, when I built ADP, I wasn't thinking about Misty Lorelei, so I didn't include it. It seemed like it kind of did most of the things that Arceus was able to do already by accelerating energy, so I don't think it's like a massive buff to that deck, but hey, it might end up being played in that deck at some point.
Yeah, it could be good. Well, let's talk about a card that rather than could be good, probably is good, and that's Silve Ally Gx. This card was the big hype card coming into the set. Most of us probably thought it set up here in S tier, but in testing, how do we feel? What do we think?
I mean, when I think about this card, it's kind of like what Blake was saying earlier, Arceus, Dialga, Palkia, where like this card is just too good not to see play at some point, and it's a colorless Pokemon. It's got the best synergy of red and blue than any other Pokemon in the game, and just having draw as an ability is really strong, especially if decks like Pidgeotto control continue to do well. Having draw on an ability is a really strong thing to have, so I feel like it could still be an S tier, but I'm not as confident about that now after testing with it.
Yeah, that's fair, Blake. What do you think? Now that you've relaxed into your chair a little bit and you're just sitting in the bottom quadrant of your camera.
I'm torn about this card. It's not because
Tell me more.
I think this ability is like obviously drawing to 5's really strong. The attack, both of its attack, not really good.
No, nothing to write home about, are they? Like 120's pretty good,
No.
but it's still not amazing.
I think the worst part about this card is that, like, going against one of Jordan's points, is that it's actually a GX. And I think now that we have Great Catcher, people might get punished for relying on this card, because 210 isn't a bigger number as we used to think it was. So there's so many cards in the format that can actually prey on this card for being on the bench, and they can kill it any time and get rid of your consistency engine. So if you actually rely on this card to draw cards and make your deck work, then you probably get punished. And there's a lot of ways to turn off GX abilities in the format at the moment, which worries me even more than that, than the Great Catcher thing. But on top of anything else, I would say trying to find a home for the deck is actually one of the hardest things because, and I do liken it a lot to the card that everyone compares it to, which is Octillery, which famously didn't really see play for like the first few months it was in format. It pretty much only saw play in Greninja Break until the Australian Broken deck at Worlds, I think. And I think that was the first time that card had an outstanding showing, apart from being like a 1/1 line in Greninja Break. But that was good in Greninja Break because it was a non-GX, as well as like the fact that it was an inconsistent deck, and you had like Dive Ball and stuff. But
yeah, I think it's probably...
I just worry that doesn't fit in anything, and also because we don't have very good basic Pokemon search. You have to put Pokecom to make the deck work, like to make to make Silve Ally fit into it and to make it consistent. I hate Pokecom as a form of search. It's so unreliable. It feels like you need to play like 8 copies of the card to be able to see it on your first turn. Somehow Mysterious Treasure magically finds its way into your hands, but you could go a whole game without seeing Pokecom, at least in my mind anyway. But then you have to see it in your hands with a Pokemon.
Stop it.
Sorry.
Stop it.
I'm doing it again.
Wait, Jordan, you and I are just going to have the conversations ourselves, because if we did the tier list, it would take us 20 minutes. I think it's an A tier card. I think that the ability is too good for it to be any lower. I think it's versatile enough to be in anything. The points you make, Blake, are fair, even though they were long-winded.
I think it's a B tier card.
I'm accepting of that, but I think it's an A tier card. Jordan, what do you think? You think happy to put it in A tier?
Yeah, I think it's got to be A tier. It's definitely like a bit average at the moment, but
I'd rather play Zeb Striker.
You'd rather play... Let's talk about the next card, Volcarona Gx. This is a card that could be very, very strong. Jordan, you're a big fan of Feather Arrow, and this has got a very similar ability, and it's got the ability to attack for 160, which is an interesting number in the format now, especially since we are looking to do bigger numbers than 270. So what do you think?
Yeah, I really like the idea of this card, but I think most of the points that we just brought up about Silve Ally, Volcarona shares most of those weaknesses.
Yeah, it does.
I don't think that it really is outstanding enough to be worth playing if you've still got those weaknesses to worry about. Like, it's certainly not a terrible card, and it's certainly not a terrible deck, but right now I feel like it's just got a little bit too many things going against it for me to rate it highly. So I see it as a B tier at most.
B tier at most. Blake, what do you think? At risk of running for the next 10 minutes talking about Volcarona, what do you think?
I'm sorry, but in my eyes, this card got infinitely worse because I'm pretty confident that just recently, when we got the English translation, we learned something horrible. And that's that you have to discard 2 fire energy and not 1 to get the ability to work.
Wait, what?
What?
Is that legit?
Just a second, give me a second.
It's on Pokebeach. It still says 1 energy.
No,
I saw people
no.
at I'm pretty sure I saw people at pre-release using. Or did you get one?
So this is a Volcarona. Once
you
during your
one.
turn, you may discard a fire energy from your hand. If you do, put 2 damage counters on it. There you go.
So someone else get it wrong. Okay, so it's not bad.
Don't scare me like that, Blake.
It's all right.
I got 3 of them. Yeah. I need these to be good.
I think its GX attack's really strong, actually. I think the way that it works is super cool. And it's probably one of the best parts about the card. I think the best way to use this card isn't probably as a main attacker, if I'm honest. I think it might be just exactly like Decidueye in the fact that you're not supposed to use it as a main attacker and just line them up on the bench and have them pinging off and fixing damage numbers for your Reshizard, probably.
Yeah, probably.
I can see that.
But it obviously does have the same problem as those other GX
how do you
decks.
build it?
Yeah, exactly. How do you get there? Because Megalopun is just going to completely destroy any deck that runs multiple Volcarona, so you need to be careful.
Imagine if Megalopun existed in the Decidueye format. It's like, great catcher, killer Decidueye, great catcher, killer Decidueye, great catcher, killer. Well,
yeah, it wouldn't be great.
It's insane. Yeah, it does share all the same weaknesses, and its ability, which is really good, gets shut off very easily. It's a fat boy too. 3 retreat.
Yeah, he's chunky. He's chunky monkey. Or bug.
Chunky buggy.
Moth.
Chunky Mothra.
Chunky moth.
I think it's a B tier card to try and save time.
Yeah, fair enough. B tier sounds good. Okay, let's keep going. We've still got tons of cards, and we've been going for like an hour and 10 minutes. So we're gonna start churning through these for a bit. We've got Oricorio GX. Oricorio GX has a really interesting ability, but I think that it's probably not super strong because of all the reasons we've been talking about with GX Pokemon. The fact that Mega Lopunny can kill them super easily means that is it worth giving your opponent 60 extra damage in order to draw 3 cards a turn? Probably not.
Well, it's kind of weird to me because this seems like an deck. But a non-GX deck,
you're going to need to repeat that there, Jordan. We saw your mouth moving, but we could not hear any words.
Sorry about that. I was just saying that it's really weird to me because I think this card's really good in a non-GX deck, but you don't really want to have a GX Pokemon sitting on your bench in a non-GX deck.
No.
So things like Lost March or even Malamar, like those are examples of decks that could utilize this ability really well, but I don't think it's busted enough ability to deal with that liability of giving decks the option to play Great Catcher against a non-GX deck.
Yeah, fair enough. Blake, what do you reckon?
I was excited about this card when I first saw it, but the more I've tested with this, I've come to realize that for all the reasons we've been listing, I'm worried enough to put a Dedenne on my bench, and that's a way better card than this. I would rather put down another Dedenne than one of this card.
Alright, so we're going off the screen. Does it go off the screen into D tier?
Yes.
I think so.
Bang. Nailed it. Alright, no worries. The last GX Pokemon that we have to look at is one that we tested and one that I didn't enjoy, and that was a Alolan Persian. This card could theoretically be good. It's got a good ability, but abilities get turned off really easily in this format. You got Mimikyu and Shrine of Punishment, and everything that is good about this card instantly disappears because you can't use the ability, so... What do you want to say about it?
I just want to say, like, I think this, hilariously enough, the the matchup where it's probably best is probably where its ability has no effect whatsoever against Malamar, because it's only worth
everything out, right?
Yeah, because it's only worth 2 prizes, and it's a dark type. It resists Giratina, and it one-shots everything in the deck, basically, apart from Mega Lopunny. So, with that, and that's the only thing running that Mimikyu. And it doesn't matter if they turn off your abilities against that matchup. Chaotic Swell is good at preventing Power Plant, which is what the other decks would use to get rid of your ability.
Yeah, that's true.
So theoretically, against the decks it's strong against, it's really good. But I mean, Reshiram has a way to shred damage. Keldeo has a way to shred through that. I mean, that's 2 great shred attacks already.
Well, and you could just play a non-GX attacker as well. Like, it's as simple as that.
Yeah, exactly. And plenty of the top-tier decks are not top-tier decks because they have good ways, they have good flexibility, and they have good non-GX attackers. So
yeah, exactly.
That's the true weakness of the deck. And also, it's really inflexible. You can either do 120 damage or 120 damage.
Hey, that's not true. You can do 50 sometimes.
Ooh. or you can do 120 to a bench Pokemon.
Yeah, that's true.
I think that's probably the most underwhelming thing about the card is the damage output.
I think it's
to Jordan.
I think it's a D tier card, Jordan. I'm not super convinced about it, but you could change my mind. We could put it in C tier.
Well, kind of like the Blastoise Piplup, I look at this card less as a deck and more as like a tech card potentially in Dark Box, because I don't think it's good enough to be a deck. And the main strength of this card, in my opinion, is the fact that I feel like the ability auto wins current builds of Blacephalon. And that's a really strong thing to add to like a Dark Box deck. Maybe it's like a 1/1 line. I don't think Dark Box needs it though, so I'm happy to put it in D tier.
Yeah, let's put it down there. Let's get rid of it. Yeah, probably not going to be super great. That's okay. In the interest of saving time, I have like a whole ton of Pokemon here, but I'm not going to bother with the ones that probably go into D tier. Let's just talk about some of the better things that are floating around. And hey, this is a non-GX card that's pretty strong, Baby Blacephalon.
I don't know. I kind of want to put this in S tier.
It's not S tier. Come on, man. Come on. It's going to be A tier at minimum.
A tier, but it's S tier in the fact that I think it's one of the cards that has the biggest influence on the metagame going forward, because that attack is just so hard to play around in Malamar. It just gives that deck such a massive boost. It's kind of hard to even talk about like how many different things that this card can do. It's almost endless how much potential 120 damage counters with a non-GX is, but it's got to be A tier in my eyes just because it is mostly limited to 1 to 2 decks.
Yeah, it's really, really strong, Blake. You've played it in Blacephalon. How does it feel over there?
It's actually really good in Blacephalon too, because a lot of the time, like when you're sort of like mapping out your prize cards, you burst GX, you probably take like your first prize with Mind Blown, and then you get knocked out, and you're like, all right, cool, I'm on 3 prize cards, time to pivot into basic Naganadel GX, the basic Naganadel with charging up. And then they knock that out. Oh, cool, I'm on 3 prizes, B-String is active, attach a Psychic and a Fire, put down 12 damage counters.
Beautiful.
Cool beans. I suppose the only problem is, all the times you probably, unless it's a very specific matchup, you're probably far better served just knocking out whatever's in the active with your B-String targets than by putting 12 damage counters down. But specifically in regards to Malamar, where it truly shines, it's pretty crazy because you can slap with a spell tag on it as well. But I do think there's more ways in the format now, like due to this set, than ever to skip that particular turn, because we got the new Gus Lord for Dark Box if that becomes relevant. We've got ADP being able to take extra prize cards to try and get around that. And also we have Mew Mew, which can use SPDO to take multiple prize cards prematurely in order to just specifically skip that turn if they feel it's necessary.
A tier card, Blank?
It's an A tier, without a doubt.
Beautiful. All right, let's talk about that Gus Lord, because that Gus Lord was mentioned. We've got Gus Lord potentially taking a couple of prizes in Dark Box, 4 energy for 120 and take an extra prize. Where do we think it fits, fellas?
I think it's a B tier card. 4 is really expensive, especially in Dark Box. In the current build, we're not playing Naganadel, so recurring Dark Energy is one of the biggest problems, and so if this card doesn't win the other game, a lot of times it can lose you the game because you lose a lot of your energy on board.
Yeah.
You need a lot of energy to maintain pressure with Dark Box. Not as many as before because we have new attackers in like the Mega Lopunny and stuff like that, which is insane. Another deck that can use it. But that being said, it's a much needed addition to be able to swing the Malma matchup, which is going to be massive going forward. I think that reason alone makes it a B tier card just because it's so strong in the deck
against that specific deck. Yeah, Jordan, what do you think?
Yeah, so it's obviously a card that's like only specifically good in Dark Box, so it's pretty specific, and it is giving Dark Box a good effect. But Dark Box already had a pretty good non-GX attacker that hit for 4 that was already good against Malamar, so and it's obviously that's Darkrai Prism, which is still going to be played in the deck. So I definitely think it adds a bit of use to Dark Box. I don't think it adds anything super new and innovative because Darkrai Prism already did most of the things this does, but it's still such a busted effect that it's definitely going to be worth playing in Dark Box.
Taking an extra price is pretty good.
I just don't think it gives the deck as big a buff as like Blacephalon does to Malamar, for example.
Yeah, fair enough. And I think that makes it a reasonable assumption to put it in B tier then one spot below it. Alright, we've talked about this card a little bit as well, and it's the new Mimikyu. This is the one that turns off GX abilities when there are damage counters on them, and this card cripples some decks. It's really, really strong.
It cripples every other deck but Malamar, so like or greens based decks. So I think the only trouble I have for putting this in S tier is that you only play it in Malamar, and that's probably the only reason that I don't see this being an S tier card. You guys could prove me wrong, but Malamar could be such a mainstay that it is like basically in every deck in the format because it's so popular. But I think because it's specifically busted in one deck makes me think that it shouldn't be an S tier card but an A tier card.
Fair enough, Jordan.
Yeah, that's definitely the argument. Is it S tier? Is it A tier? I disagree saying that it's only good in Malamar. It's obviously best in Malamar, but we have actually included the Mimikyu in quite a lot of our lists already, Mitch, haven't we?
Yeah, we have, but there's a common thing with all those lists, and that is that they lose to Malamar, Jordan. So it's a question that I think is a fair one. Is the card being good in one deck good enough?
There's plenty of lists that the Mimikyu could be good in, and that's non-GX. Any non-GX deck playing Shrine of Punishment, but Malamar does it better, so it's going to be the only deck that ends up staying around for long enough.
Yeah, well, I think that this card is probably S tier, and I'll tell you why. My thought is that it's S tier because it forces people to deal with both Shrine of Punishment damage and with the Mimikyu. So, especially in Malamar, if you're playing against something that has an ability, normally that ability is really important to that deck running. Like Mewtwo needs it to attack, Silve Ally needs it to draw cards, Volcarona needs it to shoot damage counters around the place. Like, there's all sorts of things that are needed. If you can turn any of those off with a Shrine of Punishment tick or even just a Distortion Door from your Giratina, then you're going to be able to really cripple lots of decks. I think that it's so powerful, even though it's only realistically going to be played in one deck, that it's probably good enough to be an S tier card.
Mimikyu is S tier because we've bumped a whole bunch of other cards down a tier because of it.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. It's like literally that. Because without this card, then these cards might have been a little bit better. You know, Silve Ally and Volcarona might have been a bit better.
Also, I forgot about it earlier, but I do remember saying at some point that I think this card might be the only reason that Custom Catcher remains relevant.
Yes, 100%. Yeah. And things like Ninetales as well. There's no reason to play either of those cards apart from the fact that this Mimikyu exists. So I think that that's a fair call to put that one in S tier. Agree?
Yep.
Cool. Alright, a card that probably isn't going to go in S tier, but is still a cool card to look at. One that we featured. It's a classic non-GX attacker. It's Raichu. We've kind of looked at it a little bit, but it loses to Malamar, man. Like, it's not good against Malamar. It sucks. Malamar sucks.
Malamar's not the only deck in the format, Mitch. You can take a bad matchup, I agree.
It's so bad. The matchup's so bad. If your format doesn't have Malamar in it, then you might consider playing Raichu, but I think that
if we lived in a different state, then maybe we could consider playing Raichu. But
I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry.
Everyone plays Malamar here.
Yeah.
So we hate it because it ruins the chance to build other decks.
I think that it's
Like
really
this
cool.
one.
I still think that it's like a B tier card. I think that it's powerful enough.
I agree,
Yeah.
actually. Yeah, I think it
I
has
was
really
going to say
good
C
choice.
tier, but
C
yeah.
tier. Jeez.
So I guess B could be respectable.
I think
like-
the consistency engine around this deck
Yeah, it's
is
really
too
strong.
powerful.
Yeah, it's really strong.
And it gets all the best parts of lightning, like it get the Cocoa Prism and the E powers.
Yeah, exactly. And I think
um,
literally the only thing that's holding it back is the fact that Malamar exists, and it's literally just this card. Even if Malamar didn't have the Baby Blacephalon, then Raichu could be a thing. But Baby Blacephalon being a card makes that matchup way too hard. So I'll call it a B tier because it's got to go somewhere. But it's probably not quite good enough to be in any higher tier at the moment, just because it doesn't beat Malamar. Damn it, Malamar.
I think it'd be a B tier even if Malamar wasn't around.
You reckon?
Yeah. I mean, it's a strong enough non-GX deck, but it doesn't. I don't think
It doesn't do anything crazy.
I think anything with that still plays Custom Catcher or Ninetales can really abuse the amount of energy that sit on stuff like Emolgas and stuff like that.
Yeah, fair enough.
And you have to declare, against tag team decks, you have to declare Snaggle Generator a couple of times with a couple of Electro Powers to hit those big numbers. And although half hitting is usually the goal, with the new addition of Marla, Lana and Mallow, I keep doing that. I keep reversing the starts of their names together. Not used to saying both of them at the same time. Mana and Lalo. I think those cards just make sort of strategy as probably a B tier strategy.
Yeah, fair enough. No, that's fair. Well, in that case, let's talk about another potentially low tier card, and that's Excadrill. It's similar in a way to Raichu in that it does 120 for 1 energy on a stage 1, but I feel like the way that this deck works is infinitely less consistent than Raichu, and therefore it's at most C tier, probably off the screen on D tier. What do we think?
Well, I usually forget what this card does. That's how bad
It's
it
not
is
a
in
good
my
sign.
mind.
That's not a good
I'd be
sign.
happy to put it in D tier.
It's a D tier card. If you can lose the game to Bellaba Bryson Man, I think it's a D tier card.
Yeah, fair enough. That's fair and reasonable. I figured we'd put it on there because we featured it on the channel, so that is A-OK
Sorry,
by
Matt.
name. Sorry, Matt. Yeah, we have to put it down the bottom. Alright, well, we've got a couple of Pokemon that we could have potentially talked about, but in the interests of saving time, because we have been here for let's see, like an hour and 20 minutes already, we'll move on to some of the item cards.
We could just quickly blurt out letters without talking about it. Just
We
if you want
could.
to just gloss over it.
We
Oh,
could.
man.
Alright, okay, here we go. Sawsbuck.
C.
C? Jordan?
D.
D. Cool. I don't think it's going to be good enough. It's a D tier card. Alolan Ninetales. Jordan.
I forgot what it does.
D.
D.
Tool discard. C.
Tool discard. C. D. I think it's Fairy. I'll put it in C. That's fine.
Yeah, it's Fairy. It gets Fairy
Yeah,
Charms.
it gets Fairy Charms, so it could be better. Buzzwole. Jordan.
C.
C. Blake.
C.
C. Excellent. Alright, we won't do any more. That's enough. Those are the only ones that I really wanted to put on there. Because, I mean, we could put this Cottony on here, but Lost March is bad, Marco.
D.
So we'll put it in the D tier. Okay, let's talk about some better cards then, and we'll start off with the best card in the set. I don't think that it's that much better than Megalopunny and Jigglypuff, but Great Catcher is definitely an S tier card.
Yep, no complaints here. It's going to be played in pretty much every single deck. It makes Custom Catcher, which was a very annoying card to play, almost irrelevant now. So we don't have to deal with that inconsistency anymore, and we actually get some decent discard effects as well, which the format was kind of lacking. So
Yeah.
a welcome card to the format.
Absolutely.
Also, what Darkbox was lacking, another card that me and Mitch saw and thought, yep, that makes
This is it.
Darkbox playable again.
This is the thing.
But it's not the best card in the format.
No, it's not.
Not in the set.
Not in
It's
the
not the best
set.
card.
What do you think the best card in the set is?
We're about to talk about it.
What, Tag Call?
Keep going.
Not,
Just
what?
we'll
Not
go through it.
Tag
We'll go
Call?
through it. We'll go through it. Just
Not Tackle. Well,
I'll-
I think
I'll talk
Tackle's
about
an
it
S
when
tier
it-
card. I think Tackle's an S tier card. This is a busted card.
Yeah, I think so as well.
it's a really good card. I think it's an A tier card.
Really? Just A tier? Being
Yep.
able to search 2 tag teams for free?
Yeah, it's not in every deck though.
This card is almost better than Cherish Ball.
This replaces Cherish Ball in a ton of decks. Like a ton of them.
I think like 2.
Yeah,
That's more than 2.
But like Dedenne is going to drop in counts. We're not going to see it as much because of bloody Mega Lopunny. Things like Silve Ally and Volcarona, though they'll see play, don't necessarily get as many Cherish Ball counts. I think that this is an S tier card.
Let's ignore Blake and put it in S tier.
It's an S tier card. Alright, this is the one I think that you're talking about, Blake. Is it Chaos Swell?
It's Chaos Swell by like an absolute mile.
You reckon this card's the best the best card in the set?
Absolutely.
Chaos one?
This card is an absolute menace. There are so many strong stadium cards in the format right now that make their specific decks busted. Imagine how bad some welder decks are going to be when they can't use Giant Hearth every turn. Yeah. Good lord.
Yes, that's fair.
Like, did you automatically lose to Power Plant? Put in this card. You don't anymore.
Yep.
Does every card play Marshadow? No, the only card that plays Reset Hull Marshadow, which is the only card that somewhat deals with this card. You need to play like 2 to 3 copies to have an efficient way to deal with all the time. And the only deck that's actually playing 1 is probably the deck that wants to play this card the most, which is Mew Mew. So I think this deck is like one of those ones where it's like, I can't think of a stadium to put in, but I don't want my opponent to have stadiums. I'm just going to put in 3 copies of Chaos Swell. Screw my opponent.
Yeah, fair enough. I think it's an S tier card. I think it's really, really strong. I don't know if it's the best card in the format, in the set, but it's definitely one of. Jordan, would you agree? S tier?
I would definitely rank Tag Cool and Mega Lopunny as better cards. So I'd say it's like maybe top 5. I don't know if I'd call it the best card, but I think S tier is.
I'll throw it out there. It's definitely top 5 because none of the other cards that I'm looking at are going in S tier. So those are the 5 best cards.
I mean, I played this card against Mitch, and I tell you what, in every game that I played this card against him in, he dished his Heat Factory 2 times. That's hilarious. That card's so good, and he discarded it every game as soon as I put down Chaos. I was like, well, I tell you what, I'm not going to pay my stadiums to get rid of this card just so you can use a stadium.
I mean, it is possible to counter it. As you said, you can play Reset Hull Marshadow, you can play Faber, but the fact that it's going to force people to include those cards in their list already makes it pretty busted.
Yeah, it's pretty strong.
And here's the problem, though. All of those stopgaps are good for dealing with 1 copy of Chaos Swell.
Yeah,
and the decks
what if I put down a second one?
But it's like, yes, I finally deal with your Chaos Swell. Second Chaos Swell.
I have 2.
Well done. Good job, sir.
Alright, well, let's move on. That's a unanimous S tier card. This one's a pretty strong card as well, Lily's Clefairy Doll. You haven't seen it on the channel yet, but Jordan, you've been playing around with this one in Bohemian, and it's got a little bit of potential going for it.
Yeah, I think in Bohemian specifically, it's like a super, super strong card. And I don't even think that our build of Bohemian was necessarily like the best build for it. We were playing the build that abuses Pokédoll the most with the Florges, but I think that card definitely has more potential to be played in quite a few decks just because it's a really strong stalling card, especially since there's not really many ways to get around it. If you're playing a non-GX deck, you can't really gust around it. And I actually just really love the ability to put it on the bottom of your deck while it's in play. It's almost kind of like a
That's not fair. That's not fair. I thought this card was just Robo Sub. This card is infinitely better than Robo Sub.
Yes, it's infinitely better than Robo Sub.
This card is the closest card to being S tier out of every card left. I wouldn't go so far as to say that it's S tier now, but I think I wouldn't be surprised to see the popularity of this card go up infinitesimally, or whatever that word is. I don't know how to say it.
Infinitely.
This card's pretty good.
Pretty good card.
When its counterpart was around in Robo Sub, it was pretty strong in Primal Groudon, and that was toxic, just swinging it and taking no prizes like 4 turns in a row. I'm gonna have a Wobbuffet come up, and then they just do like 200 plus damage to you while you couldn't do anything. That was fun.
I love it. Surprised if that happens again with a different card.
I tell you what, this is a lot easier to do than like put out a stage 1 like Shedinja out in the field if you just don't want to take prizes on your opponent's active every turn. I hate this card.
Yeah, I hate this card. I only just learned what it does.
I look at this card and I see like I'm getting like PTSD and I get like Vietnam flashbacks of like Luzamine and all the other broken like stall effects in the format that have previously existed, and they're all coming back in just a big ray, and I'm just like, stop, no, please, why did they print this card?
So Jordan, where do you think this one goes, gentlemen? We gotta figure it out. A or B?
Yeah, I guess A makes sense. I think there is an argument for B. The fact that Bryson Man came out in the same set is kind of annoying to me, because I thought that when I've read this card the first time that you were going to be able to prevent yourself from decking out infinitely, but now that they've printed a card that mills from the top of your deck, it's not quite the anti-deck out card I thought it was going to be, but it's still good enough to be an A tier card. It's just not going to see a whole bunch of play in a lot of decks right now, I feel.
Yeah, fair enough. Blake, would you agree A tier?
Yes, A tier.
Yep, pretty strong card. Excellent. We also have this card to reduce the amount of prizes that people take. That is Island Challenge Amulet. We can attach it to a GX, reduce their HP by 100, and then your opponent takes one prize less. Where do we sit on this one?
I was wrong. That might be the card that's closest to being S tier, apart from Liz Clefairy Doll. I just don't know how to use it yet. I'm not smart enough to figure out how to use this card, but this card is stupid, and I think there's a way to make it really good, and I just don't know. My small pea brain can't make it work. Right now, I'm using it in Blacephalon to try and make the prize trade more agreeable with stuff like Malamar, and also to make it easier to get into my Blacephalon turns if my prize mapping has gone askew. But yeah, currently I think that card has super high potential to be fast.
I think it's pretty good, Jordan. Would you agree?
Controversial opinion. I think it's only a B tier card. I think that its best place in the format right now is with the Blacephalon. I really like it in that deck. But I think for most cases, losing 100 HP on tag team Pokemon specifically is almost never worth it in my opinion. So its best uses are going to be for like your bench sitting to Denays or Silve Ally so they don't get gusted, or as you mentioned for Blacephalon. And the reason I don't have super high hopes for this card, correct me if I'm wrong, it only works on Pokemon EX and GX, right? So all future Pokemon V that come out, or Dynamax, whatever they are, aren't going to have synergy with this card.
Yeah, that's fair, but I still think that it's probably going to be good enough. Blake, would you? So you reckon it's A?
No, I think Jordan's convinced me that.
B?
Yeah, because I forgot about the fact that it's not going to, improve in the future with more cards in the card pool. And I definitely agree. It's pointless putting this card in a tag team because reducing it from 3 to 2, not a massive deal. I think only reducing it to 1 is worth it. And yeah, the 100 HP is like, that's what you pay for. Like, that's the reason the tag team is the thing, is because it's got that obnoxious amount of HP. So it's like, just play a GX then.
Yeah, that's if you want to.
Going to take a tag team and nerf it. Like,
you may as well just play a 180 HP GX. So
yeah, for the most part, the attacks from the tag teams aren't so much stronger than regular GXs that it's worth sacking 100 HP and a prize card on it.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, we've got 3 more cards to go. We've got Lana's Fishing Rod is a card that is an interesting card. I don't know if it's going to be that good, but the ability to shuffle a tool and a Pokemon back into your deck is something that we don't actually have at the moment. So it could be useful. It's just, is it worth playing? Jordan, what do you think?
It's definitely like a weaker version of Super Rod, but Super Rod was an S tier card, so a weaker version of an S tier card still probably an A or a B tier card. It's obviously like kind of a staple. It's not going to be a 4 of, I don't think, in decks, but it's going to be a card that I feel like eventually finds its way into a whole lot of decks throughout its lifespan. I've already started playing in a couple lists now, usually as a 1-of, and it's been pretty good for me. So I think it's a card that's going to have quite an impact on the format, but not a huge impact. It's just going to make your deck building a little easier.
It's going to be around, isn't it? Blake, what do you think?
I think this usually is a C tier card. Because, like you said, it's a 1-of, and it serves a specific purpose, and it does it very well. But I think because we previously lacked its function before this card existed, and was forced to use stuff like Brock's Grit, I think that makes it strong enough for it to be a B tier card.
Yeah.
I would have really loved to see it with 2 Pokemon and a tool, but that's a bit greedy. Just 1 is fine, I suppose.
But it's good enough on an item, isn't it? So you don't need to waste.
It's good enough on an item. I don't want to play Brock's Grit. I hate that card.
Yeah, it definitely feels like a step down from Super Rod and Rescue Stretcher, though.
It does. It's not great, but it's definitely going to serve a purpose. This card is one of those cards as well that will serve a bit of a purpose. It's Beastite. We put Buzzwole into the C tier. in our quickfire non-GX round. Beastite has a little bit more flexibility than Buzzwole, adds that 10 extra damage for every prize that you've taken. And it does see, you've seen some play in Blacephalon, Blake, you've put it in there. It could be good.
I think it's really strong. I think it makes non-GX Naganadel more relevant. And I think, since the tag team's health pool has been upgraded to more on an average 270 to 280, I think being able to have that extra kick on the turns, like most of the time, you need to be able to do that 30 extra damage is when you're on B-string turn. So you've probably already taken 2 to 3 prizes yourself, and you need 3 prizes to get the maximum efficacy out of this card. And I think that's probably about right. You go toe-to-toe with those tag team decks, and then you deactivate B-string. You pop off, but you're probably 1 energy short a lot of those times, which is what I've found against tag team decks. You need 5 or 6 energy. The 6 energy can be really hard to get unless you hit 3 B-string, or you got a super strong start where you're able to hold off on discarding energy in the early game, which is what Beastite is also good at doing, saving early energy discards or lost zonings off of Mind Blown. And that can't, the strength of that can't be underestimated, but it's specifically good in Blacephalon alone, I think. And in that card, I think it's above average. I think it's probably a B to C tier card.
Fair enough. Jordan, what do you think?
Can't figure out quite where it is.
I miss Choice Band, man. I want that card back, and this is the closest thing we're going to have to it, but it's not universal. I have to play like a specific deck to take advantage of this card, and I do think it's definitely good in that deck, and I would play at least probably 1 to 2 copies in that deck, because I think it is a decent buff, but I don't think it's a big enough buff to change how good the deck is. I think it's going to help it out here and there, but I don't think it really changes any of its matchups or makes it incredibly better deck than what it already is, because it's got that card. So I'd say it's only a C tier card, even though I'm definitely going to play that in Blacephalon.
Yeah, fair enough. I think that it's a low count in 1 or 2 decks, and it's going to be good, but I don't know if it's going to be as prolific as we would like, especially since the decks that we're talking about might not be the big ones. Obviously, Blacephalon is going to be a good deck, but any other Ultra Beast deck might not be able to get there. I think CT is fair.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're onto our last card, and I've saved the best till last. It's the only special energy from the set. It's Draw Energy. Where would you like to put this, gentleman?
Oh, I haven't really put too much thought into where I'm going to play this card. It's kind of like Recycle Energy. So if you're playing a deck where you need you're only playing one type of energy, such as Malamar or other decks like that, where you can kind of afford to have that one colorless energy. I like the idea of having the Draw Energy instead of the Recycle Energy, because some decks don't need that Recycle Energy every turn, and the Draw Energy is just going to be that little bit of an added bonus. But once again, just like the Beastite, I don't think it really makes a huge impact on any of the decks in the format. It's probably just like a one-off in a couple decks where your energy account allow you to play it.
Yeah, fair enough, Blake. I can't read that. What does that say? D? It says D. He's written that on the back of some proxies, and all I could see was the proxies on the other side. D tier?
I think it's a D tier card.
Yeah.
It might see play in one deck, and I think it's going to be neat in that one deck. I don't think it's going to make a one deck.
Slightly worse Recycle Energy.
That's fair enough. Well, we've got ourselves a very interesting looking tier list here. We didn't quite run through every GX in the set like we would normally do, but you don't want to. We're just going to tell you that Wishy Washy GX is a bad card. All right, don't worry about it.
Wishy Washy is a D tier card. Venusaur Snivy is a D tier card because World is in format. Let's see. What else we got here?
GX.
Every other GX that we didn't mention is a D
Hey,
tier.
look, another grass GX. Oh, awesome, D tier.
Well, it was the biggest set in history, so I think it's fair that we didn't have to go through every single card.
Yeah, no, exactly.
If we didn't mention it, it's probably in D tier.
Yeah, if we didn't mention it, it's probably not worth it.
There's a couple interesting cards we didn't touch on. There's a Dramper that does more damage if you have more basic energy on it. I think that card's exceptional in ADP decks because it does 140 if it has Metal and Water attached to it, and then with the buff it does 170 and it kills Keldeos. That's niche.
Also a Wishy Washy, which could be potentially debatably be a C tier card, but Yeah, I don't think there's anything too important that we missed out on.
There's
Yeah,
the new Ultra Necrozma, which does 170 for 2 energy and like discards an energy, but only if your opponent has 2 or fewer prize cards remaining. So until we find a way to get rid of abilities on like basics or non-jexes again, like Silent Lab or something like that, that card's not going to see play. So, you know, bunch of fringe cards here.
Nah, fair enough. Well, I'm gonna stop you, Blake, again before you list off every single card in the set. I know that you're excited to keep going, but we've been going for 1 hour and 40 minutes, so I think it's time to stop. If you are a person who's stuck around all the way to the end, then whew, good on you. I hope you've enjoyed looking at our ugly mugs for 1 hour and 40. Thanks, Blake, for your contributions. Always greatly appreciated.
Marshadow will eventually replace Mimikyu. Sneak one in there.
Sneak that last one in. Thanks, Blake. We're trying to finish the video now. We're out of time. And thanks, Jordan, for coming as well. It's good to have someone who's a little bit concise.
Not a problem. I actually really like that Marshadow as well. I forgot about it.
Yeah, no, that's true. Well, okay, well,
Yeah.
I've got it here. This is it, isn't it? This Marshadow
Yep.
has a Pikachu on it.
Maybe, I don't know.
What
I
does
can't see what.
What does
Yes,
it do?
that's the one.
Yeah, that's the one. Where do you want to put it? This is the last one.
C tier.
C tier. Bang. No worries.
Yep, because Mimikyu exists, it's the only reason it's C tier. Otherwise, it'd be A tier.
Fantastic. Thanks, everyone, for sticking around to the end. We're not going to put any more cards on. I'm considering muting Blake so that he doesn't add any more. Thanks for watching. If you like the content, consider subscribing by clicking the Sable Eye. It's in the middle of the screen, just above me, to the left of your screen over there. Some videos that YouTube thinks you'll like, and on the right over there is a playlist button. I don't know what playlist they'll have. Probably our Cosmic Eclipse Training Center. If you enjoy the content, you can consider following us on Facebook and Twitter. The links to those are down in the description. Blake, stop doing things. Stop it. I don't even know what that says. What does it say?
It says Magneton is bad. Thank you for letting me talk. Keep going.
Let's keep going. Well, you've ruined the outro now, so it's over. Thanks, everyone, for coming along, and we'll see you all next time for more from the Sable Eyes. Bye.
Bye.